Everyone, I'm Jay Adelson with Scorbit, and thank you for coming to the Inside Connected Pinball panel, where we're going to talk a little bit about connections and connected pinball. Sorry about my voice. I was not out last night, I swear. We have some distinguished panelists, and we may have a latecomer coming through in a minute. We have Scott Danesi over here. Everyone, not that, just on every panel.
Yeah, I just sit here.
Right. Scott Danesi, as you know, was one of the first to use the Scorbit platform with his total nuclear annihilation, and incredibly supportive. We have Joe Schober with American Pinball. We have Ryan White with Chicago Gaming Company. And last but not least, we have Jersey Jack Pinball, which, as you know, has been an incredible supporter of Scorbit with our integration. And Ken will be joining us, or possibly Mike, hopefully at some point in the next few minutes. Fingers crossed. So basically what I wanted to cover today, this is not a product launch or a product pitch. I wanted to talk about connected pinball, a little bit of the history of how I got into this, and maybe we can have everybody talk a little bit about their experiences so far, and then talk a little bit philosophically about where pinball's going and why connected pinball may matter or not to everyone's company. Obviously, raise your hand if you've actually used Insider Connected or Scorbit. So pretty much everybody here, okay. And just a show of hands, how many of you have felt that it has enhanced your experience playing the game? Okay, it's pretty good, it's pretty good. At Scorbit, we have a basic viewpoint around connected pinball, which is our mission is to get people to play more. You know, there's different types of connected platforms around payments, around achievements, around scorekeeping, tournaments, and even head-to-head gaming. We've seen that around the world for years. This isn't a new concept. And in fact, when you look back on it, I really have to credit George Gomez, who is not here today, but George invented a lot of this stuff with NBA Fast Break, which if you've ever played head-to-head gaming with NBA Fast Break, it's really the best way to play it. And at that time, it's my understanding that that was the plan. Like, they wanted to be able to do over a distance. It's just the internet hadn't really existed yet at the level it is today. It would have been a bit tricky. And come on up, Ken. We see you here. It's all right. Everyone, Ken Cromwell with Jersey Jack Pinball. So, you know, it's been around for a long time in various forms. And yet, we haven't really seen the design community that builds these games really build with that thought in mind. With the exception of games like NBA Fast Break so long ago, you don't see a lot of that interactivity. I loved watching Multimorphic because I really do feel that that was one of the first new platforms built after this was possible. So that ability to actually have multiplayer gaming, which we all are used to in consoles and PC world, really hadn't been brought to the physical world the way it is with Multimorphic. So I feel like that history's been around. Now, I say all this, and I've only been in the pinball community for a short period of time by comparison to all the older gentlemen at the table. I'm kidding. I've actually been at probably this, you know, so my son got me into pinball probably about 10 years ago because he's a maker kid and he loved fixing things. And he showed me a lot about how to use things like 3D printers and then slowly, you know, but surely started teaching me how to work with some of the tools which would lead to restoring pinball machines, and eventually got me hooked. And Brian O'Neill, my co-founder, everyone who's in the audience, and Ron Richards, who's not here right now, who's on the East Coast. Ron and Brian made it, just amplified it by taking me to tournaments and to expos, and then the rest is history. And the very first thing, I'm an internet guy, so my past is building internet companies. As this is my 15th startup in the internet space, which is not necessarily a good statistic. And so, you know, that's the first thing that I saw when I saw pinball was like, okay, how can I somehow connect these ideas together? But anyway, I just wanted to start with that little bit of an intro and maybe hand the ball to Scott for a second to just maybe some comments on your thoughts, your past, how it kind of leads up to a connected pinball of the present.
Absolutely. So, as you guys know, I created that game, Total Nuclear Annihilation, back in, well, you know, I started it in 2015, but it didn't hit the production line until about 2017. That game, it gained a lot of traction with people just in general, and I wanted to kind of push this thing a little bit further, and I noticed some things that Dutch Pinball was doing where they were starting to push things to the internet, and I wanted to figure out how that could be possible with that game, because I have total access to that code, obviously, because I have programmed that game. But then Jay and I got talking, and we were like, hey, why don't we try to throw a Scorbit in here and start like the actual Scorbitron, which is the purple, there's a purple one sitting on the desk right there. This is the full out, like, you know, massive, very high horsepower version of the Scorbit. Yeah, this thing's incredible, actually. If you guys haven't seen one of these in real life, it's pretty nuts. But so I got one of these guys, and I put that in TNA and started connecting it to the internet and started pushing just little things to the. I was just pushing scores to it, just to see what would happen. And it was actually connecting through my Wi-Fi at home. I didn't have to worry about the actual pinball machine at all being open to the internet, because for myself, that is completely outside of my skill set. I do not have the knowledge or skill set to secure a network stack on a computer, okay? So, and that's okay. That's very advanced stuff. But this thing is fully secured and can connect to Wi-Fi and connects directly to the servers without me having to really do anything. I just use my phone and connect it. So it seemed like a good option to get this thing pushing. So anyway, started small, pushing stuff to the internet, and then I got kind of addicted to it and started pushing more and more of the gameplay data to it. As TNA sits today, if you put a Scorbitron in it, it will push live gameplay of what you're doing in terms of how what your score is, what reactor you're on, what the status of those reactors are, what's the status of your super spinner, like all sorts of different stuff. It even has like bonus X and all sorts of other crazy stuff. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and that was where I really got involved in this, and it really opened my eyes to having this thing in other games and by other manufacturers as well. Yeah.
And you did Rick and Morty. I mean,
yes. So we did move on. We did create the integration for Rick and Morty as well. So that is functioning. The most exciting part, though, for me when I was doing this was that I looked at this thing and said, this thing doesn't care what pinball machine I'm plugged into. Like, it doesn't care what manufacturer made that machine, right? It could be a Stern game. It could be a Spooky game. It could be anything, right? But it's pushing data to the same place on my phone, to the same place on the internet where we can all compare scores across everything, right? And that, to me, just, it really was important and made a big difference in how I was looking at this thing. And I think that kind of hopefully sums up everything that I was
no, it does.
doing,
So, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but is American or is CGC the newest pinball company at this table? Like, who's been at this longer? as far as like,
CGC's probably been at it long.
We've been at it longer.
oh yeah, you've been there
Yeah.
the longest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but American is now on how many titles?
We have 4 games out. We just released Valhalla,
Okay.
and the first ones came out in 2017 with Houdini.
So does American have a position on all this connectivity?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We've looked a lot, as I think you know, with what Scorbit can do for us, and it has the advantage, kind of like Scott was just talking about, we don't want to be reinventing the wheel as far as having a secure platform and setting up servers and all that, especially, American's a fairly small shop compared to some. And so, yeah, we'd like to leverage capabilities that are out there. We've been talking for a while about, what possibilities we can have going forward. And actually, the game that's in development right now has kind of been the first one we've had where we actually were actively talking from the start about what's the concept of like achievements, what are things that you can do outside of the realm of just I have the highest score or I got to the wizard mode and everything, but what are all the checkpoints, what are the achievements and the modifiers and the secret special things you can do, and integrating that actually with kind of the base thinking about the game design. So we're certainly hoping with that game to start introducing support for Scorbit and then going back and retroactively adding that capability is trick or not.
It's a process.
Well, yeah, I mean, from a technical point of view, there's things to do about, do we want to have Wi-Fi support and all that, and how do you configure that and all that fun stuff. But it's also having intelligent things that you can do more than just pushing score. Pushing score is great, especially for competitive play, tournaments, leagues, things like that. Love that capability to be able to monitor the progress of a game. But I think in a lot of ways it really opens up when you have these kind of multi-dimensional achievements and other things you can go for and compete with others locally and remotely in ways other than just score. It brings so much more life to the game.
I'm hoping it could teach me to play pinball at some point. I mean, it's going to happen at some point. I'm going to finally learn. So, Ken, you arguably with the Achievements launch, I mean, that was obviously epic, and there was a whole lot of effort that went into that. But Guns N' Roses has now been out for a year and a half, right? And it was probably the first commercially released game that was already connected, right?
Yeah.
So you want to talk about that experience at all?
As somebody that I've come over from the enthusiast side of things before I came into the industry. So there were a lot of things that appealed to me as a player, whether it be moment-driven pinball or scoring-driven pinball. I was excited with Scorbit to finally see achievements when they were rolled out. It appeals to gamers. It appealed to completionists. And one thing that I always enjoyed with pinball machines that had deeper rule sets is that at any point and any time you press the start button, you knew that there's potentially something that you might see that you had not seen in that machine before. When we implemented achievements in the Guns N' Roses, it opened up a whole different line of things that you might not have ever considered going for. JT Harkey over at Jersey Jack Pinball, who's been working with Scorbit to implement some of these achievements, it's interesting because he says that Scorbit and the achievement platform can actually help guide you through the game. It teaches you the rules. It makes you think outside of the box. It makes you consider different ways to approach a game. And to have that ship in a box in a game already open, ready to go, is pretty incredible. It's, pinball companies, we're looking for the latest tech. We're looking for the new cool thing. We're looking for that wow moment. And, not to sound corny, but you said it. I mean, Scorbit makes pinball more fun.
Oh, that's very kind plug. So So Ryan, I mean, you've been in this for a long time. You said that, you know, CGC has like probably been making machines longer than anybody. And I mean, you've seen the evolution of this. Does it make sense to bring connectivity to a game that is an old title where the rules were invented, you know, 20, 30, 50 years ago?
What we're doing right now is we're looking at the implementation and seeing if it's going to be practical and something that we can add with the operating system we're doing right now and the hardware we're using to bring this to you guys. It's something we're in development with. We're trying to see if it's going to be something that's practical, working with our programmers, working with Jay, just trying to see if we can get this whole system running on what we're doing now.
In a viable way.
Right. And we know that, you know, with some of the remakes out there, Medieval, Monster, and Attack, Scorbit's done a great job integrating what their system is on the WMS side. So it's something we're looking at, can we integrate this all together and, you know, and bring something to life that's going to fit in with what we do as a company, which is creating a great remake that's going to stand up and really hold up and be something that you're proud to own and going to exceed the expectations of all of our customers.
I mean, I think that there's almost very different flavors of why connectivity or how to prioritize connectivity, right? And I know that Scott, you know, one of the things that I remember being an innovation, it may not have been the first form of co-op in online or whatever, but you had that co-op mode on that game, which everybody talked about as a sort of a re-energizing an alternative way of playing a game. And I guess my question for you, from a player's perspective, do you think that there's a value to live connectivity between games over distance? Do you think that co-op is, because for me, co-op's more valuable locally. At least that's sort of how I feel about it, but I'm curious what you think about that.
Absolutely. So the short answer is yes. I do think there is a value to having somebody, having two machines of the same machine connect through the internet and actually talk to each other, and you play against somebody else remotely. I know for me, my ultimate dream for that would be to be able to walk up to my machine, be able to call up my friend or put him on FaceTime or something and stick the phone on the machine right there, you know, by the back box and say, let's play a two-player game together, and him start up his machine, you know, start playing, I'm player one, I play first, the machine stops, it's connecting to his machine, it's playing all the stuff, all the videos, all the light shows and everything on the remote machine, right? And then my friend taking turns after I die and kind of seeing that, and then switching off back and forth while we're looking at each other and laughing and just having a good time. I know for me personally, I have a lot of friends that don't live near me, so that is a lot of pinball friends that would love to play pinball with me that don't live in even the same country as me. So
I'm kind of scared of what people seeing me at the times I'm playing pinball. And, you know, with all due respect to Jersey Jack and the camera, has anyone ever had a good photo taken of them by a Jersey Jack photo? Ever?
yes.
What is the deal with that? Is there an algo to, like, pick just the most ugly faces?
Yeah, you get your mugshot taken at Jersey Jack Pinball.
So the other piece is, I think, streaming, and I know that I'm sure manufacturers aren't necessarily designing machines specifically for streamers, but I think it's becoming a bigger and bigger piece.
For sure.
You know, is it influencing? I guess is streaming, which is a form of, you know, connection and an online component to how people are increasingly playing their games. Is it impacting how, like, design is happening at a place like American right now? Are they thinking about pinball streamers?
I mean, we always do, just in the sense we appreciate it. I don't know that it's really affecting any of our design choices.
Like an
at
HDMI
this
output,
time.
for example?
There might be HDMI output.
I mean, I think that what I like is the social piece from a player's perspective. And if the social part of what has happened already on the internet could be applied to gaming, you know, tweeting your score is one thing, but
Well, I'm sure you've seen, like, for example, in the multi-morphic game, some of the things where you can do, like, slash command type stuff to interact with the actual gameplay of a machine, which opens up all sorts of crazy and fun possibilities there.
I mean, does it mean we have influencers like Instagram, pinball influencers? And then who would they be? I don't know. I see
Not looking at
Manu
anyone.
in the audience right now. I'm just throwing it out there. He'd be our Kardashian of pinball.
Instead of like servo and all in the shadow, you need to have all the people watching in the front
right.
row shadow vision.
So Ken, part of the player's perspective, I think, is also the competitive piece that we've heard. Head-to-head's one thing. When do we see challenges appear integrated with a game? No pressure.
I would like to ask you that, Jay. When will we see that? Challenges is a huge aspect. When I think about the progression of Scorebit, I mean, there are even more things beyond challenges that I think would be amazing. And I know we've kind of spoken about that behind the scenes. There's not a whole lot of limitations. This guy's kind of the limit.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what our guys are working on, to be honest.
When I think about Jersey Jack, I think about a track mode for some reason.
Okay.
And it might be because it's this giant screen that, has our giant brand, coming across. And finally, my friends know what I do for a living because they can actually see it someplace. But the challenges, I think, become particularly interesting if there's something about that other player elsewhere on the internet and his score shows up on the screen, even if it's not during gameplay. Like, there's this whole area of asynchronous player competition that has nothing to do
Like recent scores from your buddies, basically.
yeah, or leaderboards that are global. I have a question for the audience, actually. How many of you think that global leaderboards, even though pinball machines obviously all play differently, but global leaderboards are still interesting? Like, you would still care about it. And raise your hand if you'd like to see it on any of these machines' screens. Wow. Okay.
Half and half.
About half. I personally am not finicky because I'm not good enough, but I can imagine why, the really hardcore players want to know that the exact tilt is the same. And I don't think we're going to be putting accelerometers and levels. I don't know, maybe. There's plenty of space.
The thing that I think is appealing with a global leaderboard is, and I'm sure we've all come into this situation where you have a pinball machine, maybe you bought a used game, and there's this grand champ score that's ridiculously high. It's something to shoot for. Once you're the grand champ of your games, where do you go from there? And to be able to compare those scores, something online, to see, maybe friends that are in your same group, similar skill sets. Are there going to be ways to kind of cheat around the system? Potentially, but I mean, nobody really wins if you're cheating for a global leaderboard. Will it happen? Potentially, yes. But again, you're not limited to what is at that machine. You're opening up doors of opportunity to compete and to connect with other people and their scores. Like, that appeals to me.
Yeah, I think there's an untapped set of rules and ping golfy things, and one of the questions we get asked a lot is about venue achievements. Like, we think about it in terms of the encapsulation of one game, but what happens if there are certain things you can achieve that require that you go to more than one place? And this is maybe in the casino world or in other places, scavenger hunts and that sort of thing. I wonder about whether or not we might design games differently once you've sort of broken out of the walls of a single unit, a single physical game. I'm not a game designer, so I can't think about those things. But I'm really curious to see what comes from that. So my last question, just in terms of design and development, we just saw the multimorphic machines, which look insanely cool. And they clearly have changed sort of your perception of like what a pinball machine might look like. And you guys did that, even taking old titles and making them even more beautiful than ever before. And I will admit, when I first saw it as a purist, I was like scared, and then I got accustomed to it. So using that as sort of a backdrop and the adoption of the remakes, do you think that there's, Ryan, do you think that there's a resistance to these new technologies in the form of the playing community and the operators? And how hard is this, just from, and you've also been selling machines probably for a while. Do you think this is a hard thing to explain the value of to somebody out there who's so used to the old way of doing things?
I think that coming from the remake side, I think people have adapted to the new technology and are really enjoying what our team brings to it, as far as the playfield boards, as far as the RGB lighting. The biggest thing that I hear from people regarding the remakes is the reliability behind our games. They really hold up. The new technology brings it to a new level of reliability. We stand really strong on the quality of what we do. As far as people adapting to new technology, I believe that people do. At first with MMR, people were, it's not an original. Now the market is dictating that the remakes are just as good, if not better, in some cases, than the originals. The number of people who've installed the RGB kits into an MMR are ridiculous. Added the big screen, added the topper, went with all the colored dots, and went with all the stuff that our team has designed for it. They've really adopted to that, and you saw that with Medieval being the key, because the purists were the purists when it first rolled out. Then they got on board, and when they got on board, literally, they're begging for more Medieval.
I think that there's the aprons of, around Insider Connected is kind of like that. There was like an initial resistance, and then people start to see the value, and the feedback comes in that actually it does something, and eventually you cut through it. But there is that initial, resistance to the concept.
It's also an ongoing evolution, right? I think sometimes people get this concept in their mind that it's going to do this and that and the other, and it'll do the dishes while you wait and whatever. And
It's like the connected fridge that never really did anything.
right, exactly, something like that. I think there are a lot of folks here, and even in the audience, actually are in technology in different aspects. And so, you have to build the foundation, which is possibly the hardest part of anything you do here. You build a strong foundation, and you can build a lot on it. If you build a weak foundation, as soon as you do more, the whole thing comes tumbling down. So it actually does make a lot of sense, even though there's that natural human impatience or kind of utopian dream of all these things I should be doing now. But you give it a little bit of time, and sometimes it's a couple steps forward and maybe a step backwards. But
What about the designers? Are the designers who are making the games, the new titles, do you have example? Are there people who are resisting it or think that it's a distraction, or are they mostly on board?
Resisting connectivity?
Yeah.
I haven't heard of any resistance to.
No, I think it's the natural progression. In a lot of ways, pinball is antiquated, whereas, your toaster connects to the internet, but pinball machines didn't. And at some point, there's a resurgence that's going on, and we have a lot of enthusiasm around the industry right now. But at some point, and I think there's active measures being taken where we need to appeal to a younger market also. And that's where I think Scorbit also becomes exciting, because it does give the younger generation that might not have pinball in their blood something like another gateway into pinball. The completionists, the gamers. I think that's something that will, when it's all said and done, will have a big impact on the industry and growing the market and the exposure for pinball in general.
Yeah, I think that connected pinball for a player might be related to engagement, right? There's also the operator. And, one of the things that it's hard for me to represent here is we have lots of conversations with operators who have a different set of problems, right? And the question of how to get a game to earn its maximum amount is partially a data problem. It's possibly an availability issue. Do you get alerted if something breaks, or does the bartender turn the machine off and it's a week later that you show up? And so part of our problem as a business is you could focus on just one of these different personas: the operator, the player, the hybrids, the venue operators, and really build a different connectivity company for each one of those. Yeah. And that's, I think, one of our biggest challenges, is figuring out how to do this and sort of raise everything up.
There's also another aspect which I have not actually heard discussed much, but there are some operators who are actually a little bit, I don't know, fearful is the right word, but reluctant to share their metrics potentially in public, and that can be for any number of reasons, some more legal than others. But I mean, it's a concern about how businesses are operating, and it's something that does need to be taken into account too, as as we move forward. That there is a sensitivity to some of the data.
100%.
You need to be aware of that when designing these systems and when marketing them to operators.
Well, the internet kind of got ahead of us on that one, in the sense that when we launched Scorbit, we were immediately an international business, and we had European customers on day one. And where data sits and how private it is and who controls it was on our mind from the very first day. I feel like there needs to be a lot more data analytics done, feed it back to the game design so that could inform decisions that are made by designers and manufacturers. I have always been really confused as to why digital payments was never as popular in entertainment machines, and the operators at events like this have explained to me, we're not so sure that that's a good thing. But post this pandemic, I think that there's a lot of people who literally have not been to an ATM in years. And so I wonder how that impacts, gameplay and how that matters. I want to leave some time for questions, but, maybe like before, my only remaining question is around the relationship of a manufacturer to the end user. Historically, these manufacturers have always been working through distributors and dealers, and there's been a somewhat of that slower feedback loop. Is that going to continue forever? Is there a desire to have that direct relationship? We know Stern has done a lot of community building, the Stern Army, and a lot of promotions. Do you think that that there's a conversation that's going to happen between the player or the machine owner and the manufacturer going forward? Maybe start with you, Ryan.
We encourage all of our customers to contact us with any issues, any concerns, any wishes, any desires. We love to talk to our customers. As far as the sales channel goes, the distribution model for us works well, because if there's an issue, you've got somebody local or somebody you have firsthand knowledge with that literally you've got a relationship with, and they can expedite, in some cases, any service issues they have by them contacting us directly. So it's one of those things where your dealer actually becomes your best friend in pinball, at least as far as we're concerned. They push forward any major issues. I say this in the nice way, it would be, if 3,000 people all have the same issue and everyone's trying to get an answer, there's only so many people in a company that can answer that question, and how long is it going to take in queue, where we can go through the dealer network and spread that mass message out very quickly, even in the day of internet.
Right.
If there's something that needs to be updated and we need to get it out quick, we can send it through the distributors and they can go, okay, wait, and it literally is like a scatter effect, versus coming from a manufacturer. Well, what happens if you don't have that relationship with the manufacturer? What happens if I don't know Ken Cromwell, and can call in direct? Well, now I've got to try and find the answer and find a way in and find the resolution. But if I call my dealer's going to go, hey, let me make a phone call and get right back to you. And my dealer's going to call Ken, and Ken's going to get them the answer right away, and then they're going to spread that answer out through other people.
I guess my question is, though, do you feel that the data of how people play the games is important to be fed back more real time to the manufacturers? Or do you think that going through the local dealer channel?
Well, I think on that phrasing of the question,
Sorry.
as far as the data, you were talking about,
Well,
the way
it's
that
both,
it was
yes.
presented was more of like,
You're right.
is the distributor model going to end? On the data, it's always helpful to us. The more data you have, the better you can implement. If you see something that's not working right, things like that, feedback from all of our customers, we appreciate. It helps, at least from our company, it helps us find problems and build a better machine. If we know something's not working 100%, we can go back and look at it, stop where we are, or come up with a fix quickly and mobilize that fix quick.
Just to touch on that, I think that's important because, a manufacturer can get a game ready to go and you can throw it out on test, right? And then you can get those audits and you kind of have an idea of how the machine's going to play, where there might be potential issues, even something like a scoring exploit. But a lot of times, you can't get as many games on test as you might want, so the sample size is smaller. With Scorebit being able to really instantly provide audits, I think that is another way in which the manufacturer can have a better product, more dependable product with the buyer, the end user, the customer. There's potential there too.
I mean, the refrigerator was supposed to just have milk appear in it, right, when it was connected. Does that mean, that Joe will have American pinball machines tell us when we have to replace the rubber?
Possibly, and I do believe our next machine will automatically give you milk, so that is one of the features we're doing. No, but
I thought it was just to get beer with Oktoberfest.
We talked about that too. No, but seriously, I think what these gentlemen were just saying is absolutely correct. I think this is just a period in time where consumers, and this is much more of a consumer business than it used to be. As we all know, you go back 30 years or something and buying new pinball machines in the home was somewhat rare. It was much more of a location model. Now there's a lot more of it going directly into homes. I think a lot of consumers are appreciative of that dialogue. Certainly we're appreciative of that interaction we can have with the customers about what they like and what they don't like. I mean, basically we're building games for people to have fun. And we try our best at that, but if we learn for whatever reason something doesn't resonate, something breaks, whatever, people aren't having as much fun as they could, and that's not what we want. We want to have a long-term interaction. We want to build a reputation for building fun games, quality games. That's how we sell you the next model. That's how we keep the resale value high, so that when you're done with your Hot Wheels, you can buy Legends of Valhalla. When you're done with your Legends of Valhalla, you can buy the next game, and you want to keep that relationship going. So, exactly what these guys were saying, having more data to do that is helpful. We often ask customers if they have problems to send us your log file, and we'll help you. If that could be done in a more automated manner, where it's just you tap one button and magic happens and a ticket is filed for you, and and the logs go and the audits go and everything happens automatically, and we email you tomorrow with the answer to your problem, that's going to help give that great customer experience. And what features people like to play and everything like that. So there's an infinite amount of ways you can use the data.
So then let me put Scott on the spot then. So let's just say hypothetically, you were able to analyze the data on TNA, and you found out that most players were not able to get to a mode that you had created. Would you in fact change the code to make it easier?
It depends what mode you're talking about, because like, you're not really supposed to beat Reactor 9. There's just people that do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really good. That's a really good question, actually, because I have early on, even without any sort of automated integration, I spent day and night watching streams of people stream TNA, right? And I was constantly sending streamers beta code updates and saying, let's try this, just play it, get as far as you can, let me see what's happening. And I would just watch different streamers with different abilities play this thing, and that's how I was collecting data. Now, if I could automate that, I think it would be okay. I don't know if it's the best thing for me personally. I probably wouldn't really look at it too much besides just saying, like, what percentage of people actually make it to the end of the game or not. Would I make a change? I absolutely would make a change if it's necessary, if I deem it necessary. But I find, for me personally, I find it more information, or getting more information from actually watching people play it, watching their reactions, watching their frustration levels, which is something that cannot be sent over the internet.
Yes, it can.
I don't know if you know these cameras.
Okay, well, never mind.
How many of you have played the new Wizard of Oz code? Raise your hand if you played the new Wizard of Oz code. Now, I'm an amateur player, and I gotta say, having that title's 10 years old, something is way more fun for me. But I know that it can sometimes be controversial to go back and change something like that. And I feel like that is changing and reinventing and the enhancements and all of these things come from a connection between that player and the manufacturer that I think connectivity can enhance somewhat.
Well, and to touch on that too, with Willy Wonka 2.0, Joe Katz just had released a new version.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Willy Wonka, not Woz.
And
that's why no one raised their hand.
The reason behind that was simply that. I mean, I appreciate what you guys do because there's so much work that goes into, coding these final wizard modes and, things you might not see until you're deeper into the rule set. But Joe was figuring out that there was maybe a handful of people in the world that would ever get to pure imagination. And for somebody to buy the game and not get the full experience and get that final payoff was something that he did go back in. And he did release almost a little mini overhaul of the code, and it allowed more people to see it. But now when I think about this from a Scorebit standpoint, to be able to pull data to say, there's less than 0.5% of people that own these games that are getting to some of these modes, maybe there are ways that you can kind of consider reapproaching it so that more people are getting the fulfillment out of the game. Because most people will not go in and make changes to their machine to make the games easier. For me, it kind of seems like taboo. I always want to play the game how the programmer and the designer intended it. So I keep the outlanes where they're at. I don't add extra balls on top of what's already there. But at some point, you want to make the game to be more fun for yourself. And again, it's just another way to kind of analyze what's coming through.
Yeah. So maybe now is a good time, if there is time, get some questions from the audience. Manu.
So I want to ask a question about the roadmap towards operators.
Mm-hmm.
So Jay, your platform is amazing, the technology is there. But all you gentlemen that work up there have worked with the platform. It seems very player focused, which makes sense. There's more players in the world than there are operators. But is there a thought from committee about how to incentivize the guy or girl who has 50 machines, 100 machines, they're all on the ground, and I have to pay $200+ to put these things in each machine? Why would I do that? Like, I know, I just was curious, where's the
On the operator side. Yeah, to repeat Manu's question, I think what he's asking is, the player focus. Everyone's hearing about the connectivity and the connected platforms around playing. There's a whole entire area around operators that we haven't touched on. Anybody want to comment on that? On operators? Is it taboo? What I could say is, Yeah, it's an expensive product right now, right? I think that in some ways, the data needs to show that an operator can in fact bring in more revenue as a result of increased plays and decreased downtime. But you have to prove that. And one of the problems, Scorebit launched in September of 2020. I mean, we've been around since 2015, but we actually started shipping to the public in 2020, in middle of a global pandemic, and there weren't a lot of bars and arcades open at the time. And we were actually going to launch here at TPF in March of 2020 originally, and we pivoted it over to be very player focused. Well, now we're there, right? And it's starting to come through. And I think the first thing you're going to see from Scorebit is we always have had this pro product, which alerts you when something's down and gives you metrics. But we're going to release a portal that includes a number of features specific to operators, like better analytics, different types of notifications, and as we've commented in the past, a payments platform, which is opt-in per the whole, sensitivity issue, that, with the subscription of the product, it will just come with a digital system so that a player can just use the app to put coins in the game. But it's not our business model, so that would be just the transaction cost from Stripe or whatever it is. Does that answer your question a little bit? But I guess there is a definite math issue around the cost. And so one of the things that Scorebit has been working on also is to drive that cost down or make it go away. And I think our goal is to get to a point where if you're an operator and you have 50 machines, you're not actually paying for hardware at all, and that it's essentially just the subscription, and it comes, and if you guys keep building it into games automatically, then I don't have to worry about selling hardware. I can get out of the hardware business. Okay, next question. Back there? Yeah. I love the enthusiasm. I think that, I don't think that, it was interesting when we engaged in building the achievements. We actually built this platform sort of structured the way we thought it was going to need to be, and then later on, when Jersey Jack went back to all their titles, I would have paid to be a fly on the wall, having those conversations about, like, really, I thought I was done with this one, and now you want to add all these different components. What I don't know yet is who is going to create the achievements that go across games or venues or locations. Is it our job? Should we, not our job to make them, should we offer the platform to the venue operators or to the routed operators? It's a fascinating, it's like a new canvas to paint with that it's kind of hard to even imagine what to do with it.
But it's exciting to see the evolution and the options that are available. I mean,
It happened fast.
yeah.
I feel like it was yesterday. No one would even think about connecting a machine.
And you were talking about different challenges you can have and things like that. One of the kind of like little subtle improvements from an operator's point of view is, if you have a pinball game that's like a standard pinball game and it's open-ended, and you have, Keith Elwin walks up and puts up, 20 gazillion points on the game, and it's a global leaderboard, everyone can just look at that and be like, yeah. But if you do other kinds of challenges, like a 1-minute drill, for example, which is just a different perspective, but it has a couple of advantages if you're an operator. One is that game lasts 1 minute, as opposed to that L1 game, which goes on for 2 hours, and the operator only made $1 on it. 1 minute, $1. I mean, that's moving money through the cash box. It also has the interesting attribute of putting a natural clamp on what those top scores are. So you won't walk up to the leaderboard and it's 20 gazillion points and everyone's like, I'm not even going to bother. There's no chance in hell. It's always something that seems attainable. And so everyone will walk up and like, oh, I can do that. And you get close.
Well, so we have a version of that on Scorbit now called Challenges, where you can, when you're done playing a game, well, it's really more of a one-on-one player-to-player thing. Or when you're done with a game, you can tag any number of other people to challenge them to beat your score, and then each of those people have 1 week to beat your score. And then it expires, and if they can't do it, they lose. If they can do it, they win. And that was that's an easy sort of low-hanging fruit. There are so many different versions of challenges. We also haven't talked about the tournament integration and all this kind of stuff. But I feel like we have time for maybe one more question, because I think we're right against 5 o'clock.
I don't even think you have time.
Or we don't even have one more question.
No.
I think we're done. All right, well, thank you very much. Sorry, Neil. Appreciate it.